Good day. This is Mike O'Hara from the Natural Products Association. I'm Vice President of Membership, and I'm happy to be joined by Jim Emme. Jim is the CEO of the Now Health Group and the President of Now Foods. Jim, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mike.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So Jim, just a few questions for you today, and let's start off with one that I think is, really important to us is, why are you a member in your organization, a member of NPA?
Well, one of the reasons that we're members of NPA is frankly legacy. NPA is the oldest trade organization in the natural products industry in North America, and especially the United States within that. But NPA goes back to the legacy of NNFA, and now started out as a retailer in 1963 in areas here in the Chicago areas called the Fruitful Yield. And eventually in 1968, the Now brand itself, Now Foods, became the house brand for Fruitful Yield. It was developed in order for Fruitful Yield to be more competitive, being able to provide value to customers. So our founder, Elwood Richard, his brother, Lou Richard, were members of NNFA even in the late 1960s, and were very active on the board, active in the standards committee, helped set some of the original standards that were set up in the 1970s. So really the legacy of Now, and really at the time NNFA was over 30 years old, Now was a part of that from early on, and has been, and we've been members now for 55 years. So things have changed, times have changed. Back then we were primarily an organic natural food company. Supplements were a little bit of an afterthought. Now we're more of a supplement company. But other things have changed too. The regulations have changed. Now we're strong advocates of the passing of DSHEA in 1994 and implemented in October of 1994. So as we become more of a supplement company, the regulatory environment's been more challenging as well. So we find great value in being part of an organization that really understands standards, can really help us be a better company to achieve these standards, which supports our mission of providing value in products and services that empower people to live healthier lives. It's just a good fit.
No, it's great. Great. Thank you very much for that, Jim. Thank you. I think great answer. Speaking of the industry in general, what are some of the top challenges, as you guys have obviously been in the industry for a long time? Now, as we're into 2023, what are some of those top challenges that are facing the supplements and the natural products industry?
Well, it's a good question. The top challenges in the industry I view as, and we as a company view actually, are both internal and external to the industry, but they're not mutually exclusive. Internal, I would describe as, are everyone in the industry following the rules that are in place and that should be followed in a manner that's appropriate? Are we doing what we say we're doing? The external ones are consumer dynamics. What are consumers looking for? What is their trust level of our industry? There's also the regulatory dynamic of, we supported DSHEA, so we want to support the actual existence of DSHEA, including following the rules, being a good citizen, corporate citizen, in our industry, but also making sure and supporting the FDA and following the rules too, and also challenging them when they're not. I think there's another leg of this stool, and one could say there's probably multiple other factors involved that we could talk about. But that's also the external forces not many of us control, and that's litigation. In litigation, starts out with good intentions in many ways. It's a good way for consumers to police what companies are doing, but it also can be a heavy burden on companies that are unreasonable. And
Mhm.
if there are misunderstandings with regulation, we can be sure the trial attorneys are going to jump in and help bring clarity, good or bad, to it. Bottom line is they typically aren't trying to bring things to a conclusion to solve it. They're looking to monetize it and settle. But companies can be good citizens only if they're sincerely trying to follow the
Yeah.
rules, but also uh, making an effort to do the right things for the right reasons with that. And that's being reasonable and understanding and communicating what the issues are. And there are many good trade groups in the industry, uh, but NPA really provides a forum from which to get to the meat of issues,
Sure.
connect to dots of what the real challenges are.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. So speaking of those challenges, how does the industry overcome them? What actions would you say the industry needs to take to at least take us some positive steps to overcoming these challenges?
Well, I've been asked many times that one of the challenges of our industry is that we, are all everybody in the industry going to have the same point of view? And my answer to that is, well, we can be idealistic and say absolutely everybody's going to agree to the same standards and the same rules, but we're not. We're all driven by different priorities, different strategies, different business models. I mean, we're one of the largest family-owned companies in the industry, maybe even the largest. I think it's give or take sometimes, depending on what category of products that you're in. Uh, but our values and our priorities may be different than that of a large multinational corporation that's many of whom have entered into our industry in the last few years. Consolidation's been heavy.
Mhm.
We've got a strategic chart we look at when we talk strategy, and one of the slides in that chart is uh, talking about who owns what, who owns who, and every year it never fails that family-owned, privately held companies are becoming very, very rare, and there's just a few of us in the cheese box standing alone. A little bit on that, but I think even though one advantage we have that even though we may have differences, we're a collegial industry.
Mhm.
We're all competitors in one way or another, but the reality of it is we're collegial. We get along for the most part, and even when we disagree, we respectfully disagree.
Mhm.
But we all know that uh, the companies that have been here a while, that we understand that we intend to follow the rules, we intend to do the right things, but we need to make sure that we're doing the right things at the right time according to the rules of what they were intended to be.
Sure. Sure.
Now that's an internal perspective.
Mhm.
Externally, uh, people that like to spread the rumors that we're an unregulated industry are misguided and uninformed, with all respect to them. And we can all only make decisions based on the information that we accept that's been available to us. And ourselves, we're in supplements, we're in foods, we're in personal care,
Mhm.
we're in pet supplements, we have sports, several different categories with a large mix of SKUs.
Yeah.
Well, gee, if we're unregulated, let's see. All of our tablet presses for producing supplements and capsule filling machines have to be registered with the DEA. Most consumers don't know that. That's an obscure little thing, but that's to keep it out of the evil guy's hands so that they're
Yeah.
not using fentanyl pills
Yeah.
or some other dosage forms. And whenever we buy or sell a machine, we've got to have a register or the numbers registered to the DEA, and that's good. It's righteous and appropriate.
Yeah.
We have to submit to EPA rules for emissions of our facilities, water usage
Mhm.
and discharge, and those again are good rules for good reasons. We do tinctures and extracts, essential oils and such, and blends. So we deal with ethyl alcohol,
Mhm.
widely known as Everclear. So the ATF manages us, and we have to keep track of that. And oh, by the way, the USDA manages and oversees our organic certification program.
Mhm.
Great program. And ATF's program is good too. And then, oh, by the way, with the SHEA, we fall under the FDA and also FSMA with foods. Good rules for good reasons.
Mhm.
So, and that doesn't even count all the local, state, and the regulatory agencies, departments of health that we have to follow in the areas that we operate in. But the list goes on, and we, for fun, listed out all the agencies that oversee what we do, not counting the IRS and such. And you know, we're up to about 14 or 15 federal and local agencies, and we
Sure.
probably missed some when we've done that. DOT oversees our trucks and things. So the point of it is, we're a highly regulated industry in many, many ways. It just depends on if the regulations are followed. And just like any law, they're subject to interpretation. And as a company, we need help with that sometimes, and
Mhm.
that's where we believe the trade groups come into play. And responsible companies will care about that. And I'm happy to say that most of the companies that I know that are members of a trade group like NPA do care about this
Mhm.
and do intend to completely comply. They just need clarity in what the rules might be.
Sure, sure. No, that's a great point. And you kind of touched on a little bit of some of the importance of trade groups. So what would you say the value that NPA brings to the industry? And also what value does NPA bring to Now Food specifically?
Well, that's a good question, Mike.
Thank you.
The value, I get asked that a lot, actually. You know, I'm not here to say good or bad of any trade organization, although I will say every organization has its place. They've got
Sure.
their specialty and such. Um, when we get into the clarity piece of things
Mhm.
regarding any of those agencies that I listed, for example, if you're having an issue with an export license or something like
Mhm.
that, um, there aren't many trade groups that have the capability of the Natural Products Association.
Mhm.
They're based in Washington, D.C. We are very active in NPA. I'm on the board, full
Mhm.
disclosure, by choice, and that's with full support of the principal owners of our company and our board of directors. And if you've got a real challenge that's being difficult to overcome, the place to go to is NPA. You can get information from a lot of other trade groups, but if you need
Mhm.
action, NPA is the one. Why? NPA, one of the most solidly scientific organizations. The
Mhm.
CEO of NPA, Dr. Daniel Fabricant, uh, PhD, pharmacology, botany, and such, under Dr. Norman Farnsworth, one of the pioneers in
Mhm.
our industry to really bring true science to our industry. And I could go on and name Vero Tyler and some others
Mhm.
and there, and I'd omit many, and I wouldn't be doing justice to it. We've got a legacy and connections of there. And oh, by the way, Dr. Fabricant was the first director of the Office of Dietary Supplements in
Mhm.
FDA after DSHEA was established and really put into place in 2007, 13 years after DSHEA was passed. Uh, you know, no offense to the agency leadership at that time, but they sure drug their feet on things a little bit. But Dan understands what's happening, understands what works and what doesn't, and he can bring scientific clarity. And if he doesn't, he knows the people who can. The second value that NPA brings to the table is uh, I've been to Capitol Hill, been very fortunate many times to do that with Dan and Kyle Turk of NPA and others. And when you walk in the door with the NPA team, all of a sudden they take you seriously.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying other agencies or trade groups aren't. I'm just saying you get it quickly and you get the direct access right away. That means a
Sure.
lot.
Sure.
And Dr. Fabricant, one of the first things he likes to say is, they don't want to talk to me. They see Kyle and I all the time. They want to talk to you. And you know, we embrace the local political environment here in Illinois and Nevada, we're not politicians by any means, but we also understand the influence our ability to operate as a business. And there have been a couple of times where we've had challenges in the regulatory environment that we've asked for help. One of our senators is very open-minded to speaking with us, Tammy Duckworth, and Tammy's a reasonable person. She doesn't always agree with what we have to say, but she's honest and honorable.
Sure.
Our congressional reps in the area will work with us as well. But Senator Richard Durbin, the senior senator of Illinois, is just not a fan of our industry for whatever reason. But even he has come to see us, and I don't think he has anything against us per se, but there's something in the industry he just doesn't agree with, and he thinks everything needs to change. And that's another external force I referred to. But the value NPA brings to the table is if we want a meeting with Senator Durbin's people, they'll meet with us.
Yeah.
And even if we disagree, it's a reasonable and an opportunity to face discuss our challenges. Not many groups will do that and allow us to have direct impact on Capitol Hill. And that's a big piece of it. And full disclosure, we're members of the majority of the trade groups, with the exception of a couple, because we're just not, can't be in all of them. And it's what's our strategic alignment? And each one of them adds value to us in many ways.
Sure.
But for the amount of work that gets done on our behalf as a company, you asked that question of how it helps now.
Yeah.
Our dues is low compared to other organizations. And the value we get out of that is incredible because of that access, because of the help, because of the expertise. And the other advantage of it is that there's, I don't know, for a lack of better term, there's not a lot of pretension in NPA. They're business oriented. The team is focused on business and supporting business. Other groups focus on consumers and niche areas of the business, and that's needed. That's necessary. There's a place for everybody in that. NPA cares about consumers, but it's retailers, manufacturers, supply side people, trade media. Everybody's pretty welcome here at the organization, and you're not going to break the bank being a member of NPA. And what you get in return is just incredible. And the last thing I'll say, that speaking for now and speaking for other topics, and even as a group, I know others can speak for themselves. NPA gets things done. There's a track record of success. NAC, that challenge was an unreasonable situation. Without going into much details, and with the partnership with NPA and some others in the industry, we won that fight. Now, are those that'll say, well, we didn't close the loop on this piece of it, or there are still some loose ends? Yeah, but what else has the industry won on? And it ended with a reasonable discussion between the agency and HHS and DOJ and NPA. And you know what? We got to a spot where everybody could live with it, at least for the time being. And boy, talk about hundreds of millions of dollars of trade sales that were going to be affected by an unreasonable decision. NPA was a leader in that, and I just can't say enough for how they know how to win.
Yeah.
Talk is talk. I played basketball a lot when I was a kid, and one of my favorite coaches was John Wooden with UCLA in the old years, and Ted Lasso and a character in that. We had the wooden pyramid of success on it and values. But one of my favorite quotes of John Wooden was, "Never mistake activity for achievement."
Yep.
And the members of NPA never have to doubt that they are achieving.
Great. No, thank you for that, Jim. Thank you very much. So last question I have here today is so kind of been in the industry now. Foods has been around for a very long time, great expertise. What does the future hold for this industry? What's on the horizon for the natural products industry?
Well, I think there's a lot of opportunity. COVID with all the hardship and human suffering of it around the world. You know, people can have different versions of it. It was so emotional. People were
Mhm.
scared. I have to say, as a CEO, I've was ill prepared for what we were going to do. We had a plan, and well, the plan fell apart right when the quarantine started hitting, and
Yeah.
I was pretty naive in what I thought was going to work and what wasn't going to work. But you know, we figured it out and we worked through it, and everybody as an industry did as
Yeah.
well. But that gave us a huge uh, entree to consumers that never had even thought about a natural product or a supplement before.
Mhm.
And it exposed us to a lot of people that were there. And of course, the minute some of the vaccines came out, you know, good or bad, but
Mhm.
people felt safe after they did it for whatever reasons, and they opened up and said, "Okay, I'm getting out. I'm tired of this lockdown. I'm going to do it." And by the way, now that we've gone on for a while, the worst is over. I don't want to take a supplement again. But there were a large percentage of those new consumers
Yeah.
that stayed with us. And why did they stay with us? Because they trusted us.
Mhm.
And that trust is so precious. And if we don't get our act together as an industry and work on those of us who are doing the right things
Mhm.
and producing safe products that are compliant with the law, if we don't call out those who are not as an industry, we're going to have problems.
Mhm.
But there's a natural hesitancy for people to participate in that because of the fact that um, they are we're competitors.
Sure.
It's inherent, and there's no collusion going on or anything. But you know, we do follow the same standards, so therefore we've got common interest, or at least we should be. Uh, we really have to welcome people in the trade groups, and especially here at NPA where it is happening. If you
Mhm.
don't meet certain standards, you're not in,
Sure.
and you've got to be willing to make those commitments. The other thing I think is going to happen, the regulatory environment is going to be there. I'm going to quote another basketball great who had to be agile in his career change, and that was Grant Hill. I was on a Zoom call with him during COVID, and somebody asked him, said, "Well, what was your biggest lesson in everything? You had an incredible career going.
Yeah.
Of course, he was the next Michael Jordan. You and I are Chicago area guys. I'm not sure we
Mhm.
agree with that on anybody, but he
No
would
way.
but he made the statement that, you know, he blew out his ankle, his career was
Yeah.
gone. And he said, "Yeah, I learned a big lesson, and I learned a big lesson that still counts today as a businessman, that change is inevitable and growth is optional.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
if we don't address the regulatory issues and support the ones we believe in and collaborate and work and challenge as needed with the agencies that govern us,
Mhm.
to be able to keep things at affordable price and accessible to consumers, uh, that growth is not going to be optional. It's going to be non-existent. Now, why is that important? Because we're selling supplements into 92 countries right now. Sometimes it goes up close to 100, sometimes it drops to 90. But we've got a solid base, and one of our largest growth areas is international. NPA is an international company. NPA understands the international regulations,
Mhm.
and some of the other organizations are good at it and get it some too. But again, the fact that the leadership at NPA is engaged in this and understands it, I think is an asset not just to the companies who join NPA, but to the industry as a whole and to consumers too.
For sure. For sure. Jim, thank you for all the time and all the great feedback. Any last comments or anything else you'd like to add today, my friend?
No, thank you, Mike. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I would just encourage everybody to take a look at NPA. The Natural Products Association is the oldest association in our industry, and has a lot of rock solid expertise that can help companies of all types, no matter what category you're in.
Great. Thank you for that, Jim. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, Mike.